Direct from the Coupe de Carp and streaming around the world on blasttheradio.com, Twitch TV, and Facebook Live. Engaging you in conversations about the hot topics of the day. The number to call is 613-413-2217. And now, the legendary Lowell Green, live on blasttheradio.com.
Thank you, John. Suspicious minds. Yeah, I have a suspicious mind. Like, I'm not going to deal with this, but I'm still trying to figure out how yesterday we were told that we had to have 21 days between these two doses of vaccine. And then suddenly, I guess out of desperation, 4 months would be fine. I have a very suspicious mind there, believe me, if for no other reason that this gets Justin Trudeau off the hook, right? Now, on another issue, we've dealt with vaccines until it's coming out everybody's yin-yang, or wherever it comes out. Folks, this year, and I think a lot of you know this, but I'm just going to reiterate here. This year, Canadian taxpayers will pay about 17 billion, that's with a B, about $17 billion for foreign oil, mostly from Saudi Arabia and the United States. Well, actually, the bulk of the imported oil comes from the United States. A lot of people don't know that. You may remember that the rail cars, which exploded, caught fire, and killed 46 people in Lake Megantic in Quebec, those rail cars were carrying oil from North Dakota on their way to the Irving Oil Refinery in St. John, New Brunswick, which is where Energy East was supposed to go. Just to remind you that about 65% of Quebec and 100% of the Atlantic provinces use only foreign oil. They do not have access to Canadian oil. So the reason that I raise this, I want you to think of this. Now, I know that I have a good many viewers and listeners who are very concerned and are quite capable of some pretty serious thought. So think of this. If we are already buying about $17 billion worth of foreign oil to supply the needs of Eastern Canada, just imagine how much it would cost us to supply all of Ontario, all of Quebec, and all of the maritime provinces with all foreign oil, gas, propane, etc., etc. Just imagine, it's now $17 billion for about 65% of Quebec and 100% of the Maritimes. So imagine what it would cost us if we had to throw the other 45% of Quebec and 100% of Ontario into the mix. I mean, common sense dictates that if, 65% of Quebec and the Maritimes was costing us about $17 billion, you add pretty well half of Quebec and all of Ontario, you're probably adding, another $15 to $17 billion? So it's common sense that if we had to supply with foreign oil all of Ontario, Quebec, etc., it would cost us, the taxpayers, this is not government, that's to come from your taxes. It would cost us somewhere between $30 and $40 billion, maybe more, because there's a lot of petrochemicals involved in this, and I'll talk about that in a moment. Now, the reason you say, well, what's this got to do with us, Lowell? This is what we face if Line 5 is shut down. Yeah, I'm talking about Line 5, because this has become a much more serious crisis. So serious that finally we have bestirred that giant intellect, Seamus O'Regan, from his slumbers to actually say something. He says, if you can believe this, well, the federal government will do everything in its power to make sure that Line 5 is not shut down. Well, Seamus O'Regan. But it's so serious that Premier Ford has now come into it and has pointed out quite correctly. He's so concerned. He says, look, if they shut down Line 5, this will devastate the province of Ontario. So this is this is what we are staying in, what stares us in the face. Not only the terrible cost, the 30 to 40 billion dollars that it would cost us, but the devastating shortages of oil and gas, diesel, jet fuel, and propane if Line 5 is closed. Premier Ford, absolutely correct when he says closing Line 5 would devastate the economy of Ontario, not only the cost and the shortage, but somewhere in the neighborhood of about 30,000 Ontario jobs, including about 5,000 jobs in Sarnia alone. Actually, the picture when it comes to employment is even bleaker when you consider that the petrochemical industry, which supplies us with everything from what? Toothpaste to aspirin, would also be effectively shut down if they close Line 5. Now, many of you, I'm glad to see, are aware, at least reasonably aware of what we're talking about. But there are many other Canadians who just are not paying attention to what stares us in the face with Line 5. As I say, some of you are aware of the threat, but many are not. So very briefly, bear with me, let me review the situation. Line 5 carries oil from Alberta to the 3 giant oil refineries in Sarnia. Sarnia, in turn, refines the oil and supplies about 45% of all of the needs in Ontario and Quebec for oil, gas, diesel fuel, and 100% of the jet fuel for Pearson Airport. That's what Line 5 supplies. About 45% of all of Ontario's needs for oil, gas, diesel, propane, etc., and about 45% of Quebec's needs, it's once again for oil, gas, propane, etc. And in addition to that, 100% of the jet fuel used by Pearson. You can just imagine what would happen if that's shut off. Now, the line runs from Alberta, brings Alberta oil. But the problem here is that because it's a much shorter route than going north, around the north of Lake Superior, it goes through northern Michigan. And here's the problem. It goes under the Straits of Mackinac, down Ontario to Sarnia. It was built in 1953. It's had absolutely no safety problems, no leaks of any kind, although, and this is being used against it, there have been at least 2 recorded instances of where very careless boaters have dropped anchors and hit the pipe. As I say, there have been no problems, no leakages, but it's 65 years old. And as the governor of Michigan says, and she's a real wild lefty, Democrat, and she has a lot of support, and you can understand some of the support from some of the environmentalists. She says, look, excuse me, this pipeline is 65 years old. It runs beneath, essentially, Lakes Ontario and Huron, between the two. So if we have a leak, it would seriously pollute both Lakes Michigan and Huron. I'm sorry, I just said Lake Ontario. Lake Huron and Michigan, it would pollute, and perhaps even partially pollute Lake Superior. Excuse me. This would be a very, very serious blow for the state of Michigan. So she says she has issued fair warning that as of May 11th, she says you have until May 11th of this year to fix this problem, or I am shutting it down. There's some question whether she has the legal authority, but she probably does. There have been licenses granted to Enbridge to have this pipe going through Michigan under the Straits of Mackinac. She says that on May 11th, she will withdraw those licenses, and thus there will be no permission. Now, Enbridge, of course, is fighting this. And finally, the Trudeau government seems to have come awake. And as I say, Seamus O'Regan says his government will do everything it can to fight the closure. But, you know, given the government's, I'm talking about the Trudeau government's scorn, contempt even, for the oil and gas industry, and its acceptance of the Keystone Pipeline cancellation, I mean, they did absolutely nothing. In fact, you could, if you read between the lines, Trudeau actually approved of the cancellation of Keystone. So, in light of that, you have to wonder just how serious a fight Trudeau would launch on this. And in fact, what kind of a fight could they launch? Mind you, and I was on Rob Snow and Rob and I talked about this morning on his show. There's a hell of a difference between workers, oil patch workers, gas patch workers, etc., in Alberta and Saskatchewan. I mean, none of them vote Liberal anyway. But if the economy, let's just say that voters, Liberal voters in Toronto and Montreal, find that the price of gasoline has doubled, trebled, quadrupled, and not only that, but they can't get it. They can't get any oil to heat their home. They can't get propane. And all of the jets at Pearson International are grounded because there's no jet fuel. Maybe some of those people in Toronto and Montreal, and maybe even some in Ottawa, might say, you know what? I don't think we're going to vote for this government anymore. So that in and out of itself might spur the federal government to do something, but I don't know what it can do. There is very strong support in Michigan and throughout the United States for the governor of Michigan. The pipeline, I repeat, 65 years old. If it springs a leak, it would seriously damage Lakes Michigan and Huron, which would affect a lot of people in the United States, not just Michigan. So there is a lot of support. And don't forget, in addition to that, is the Buy American program. So there's one other thing. Actually, there are three things here that I think, are very serious, provide a very definite impediment to us putting a stop to this. Number one, Trudeau and his government has no experience whatsoever defending pipelines. If they'd had some experience, they've had lawyers who have tried to defend pipelines, then that might help the situation. But in fact, I mean, everything that Trudeau has done has been to kill pipelines, right? So there's no experience. How do you defend a pipeline? And don't forget, I mean, he's got there'd be probably plenty of environmentalists in this country that would welcome the cancellation of Line 5. Number two, this is very important. Number two, the Michigan government has a point. Line 5 is 65 years old. If it springs a leak, serious damage would be done to the Great Lakes. This is a very powerful message that the government of Michigan has, and for that matter, the federal government in the United States. And number three, and this is something that a lot of people aren't aware of. This is why I'm talking about the cost. Killing Line 5 would be a tremendous boon to the U.S. economy. Think about it. As I pointed out earlier here, most of the oil and gas needed to supplant Line 5 would have to come from the United States, a little bit from Saudi Arabia, but mostly it would have to come from the United States. There would be an immediate and desperate need in Ontario and Quebec for oil, gas, jet fuel, propane as well. So we're looking at something, safe to say, in the neighborhood of an additional 15, 20, 25 billion dollars for the American oil industry, almost overnight. If they cancel Line 5, almost overnight, we're going to have to get huge amounts of oil from some other source. It's going to obviously have to be foreign. Most of that will be from the United States. A huge boon to the U.S. economy. And don't think the Americans don't know that. So there's the situation, folks. Rob Snow and I are about the only people talking about this. I hope that, we're not just ticking some of you people off. You don't want to hear it again. Somebody's got to start paying attention here. The heat in your home, the gas in your car, the diesel in your truck, the jet fuel in the plane that you might need to take, propane that you may need. I'm sure that some of my listeners heat their homes with propane. Without Line 5, we'd have no propane or very little. So it affects you. It's got to affect you. That's why I keep pounding away here. This is a real danger. And, if you don't think it's a real danger, then I ask you this: why would the federal government suddenly get involved? Very clearly, the federal government thinks there's a problem here, or it would not have bestirred itself. Just point that out. I hope I'm wrong. I think the chances are that somehow we will be able to get through this. But as I've pointed out many times before, here and elsewhere, this is criminal that this country, our great country, Canada, with the third largest oil reserves in the world, are dependent upon the goodwill of a foreign nation for our energy security. If the United States decides they're no longer our friends, if they decide that there's too much risk to the Great Lakes, they can essentially shut off almost half of all the oil, gas, etc. for Ontario and Quebec. And they can do it easily. How we have allowed ourselves to get into the position. I mean, think about it. Think about it. All we had to do to circumvent this, to get ourselves out of the grasp of the greedy Americans, was build Energy East. Energy East would bypass Line 5, come around the Canadian route north of Lake Superior, down to Cornwall. We wouldn't have to worry about Line 5. But Trudeau canceled Energy East. So you know what? We could very well be screwed, blued, hewed, and tattooed. Hope's company's been around a long, long time because they do things right. As I have stated before, in many ways, I mean, Ottawa is a big city, 1 million population, but in many ways, it's still a small city. Most people know somebody else in the city. So if you do something wrong, if you screw up on a project or whatever it is, or overcharge or you lie, the word gets around very quickly. And in all probability, you don't last. Or if you do, you're just limping along. Well, I'm going to tell you, Centennial Glass does not limp along. They do very, very well. They have done business with literally thousands of people, thousands of other businesses. And the only reason for this is they do business right. Centennial Glass. Glass of all kinds, folks. Repairs, glass furniture, windows, doors, centennialglass.ca. Yes, John.
Broadcasting live on blasttheradio.com, on Facebook, and now on YouTube as well. Oh, yes, we're also on Twitch, where we got a comment from Maggie who says, I think people need to be brought up to date regarding how much people depend on oil production. We have a few pipelines going into the States. We should reroute them. No oil for the States. And all this talk about going electric, do people know where the electricity comes from? Not wind or solar, but natural gas and nuclear plants. Phone calls and texts are welcome. Our number here is 613-413-2217. Barry says, Lowell, even if Michigan doesn't shut down the Line 5, we should be conscious of the pollution it could cause, and we should bypass Line 5 and reroute it through Canada on our own ground. Over on Facebook, Peter says, yeah, we have no oil of our own to use first before we sell it. My understanding, places like Iraq use their own oil and sell what they don't use first. But in Canada, we sell it and then buy it back. Is that true? Asks Peter.
Yeah, it's true. We sell, and this is one of the problems. We sell to the United States because it's the only other market. We can't. The environmentalists won't let us sell to any other customer. So we have the United States has a monopoly on our oil. So we will sell. There was one point during the summer, or maybe a year ago, sometime, when we were selling our oil to the United States at about $20 some odd per barrel. And they were selling it back to us at about $50 to $60 a barrel. This is one of the great problems. It's because they won't let us, the environmentalists, the liberals, won't let us get our oil to other markets, so that the United States is a monopoly. Not only is the United States a monopoly, but it now has the right to essentially cripple our economy by shutting off Line 5. I want to thank all of the environmentalists out there, all of the liberals, including a good many of them right here in Ottawa, for doing this, okay? This is where you have put us, over a barrel, up a creek, without a paddle. Thank you. This is wonderful. More text coming in, John.
Yeah, once again, our number here is 613-413-2217. Bob says, Lowell, while you're so right, we need this pipeline to shut off so we can shift into reality. Short-term pain for long-term gain. Lisa says, most people seem unconcerned their heating bills are exponentially rising. Ann says, not feeling very confident with Seamus O'Regan at the helm.
Yeah, right. You're right there.
Kathy says, I heat my house with propane and I am nervous. Glenn says Trudeau or Ford just needs to spend another $10 billion to add alternate route in Ontario to forget about Line 5. Just do it, he says in all caps. And Tim says you can bet that there will be an election here before the potential shutdown of Line 5. And adds an all-Canadian pipeline? Nope. Vaccine production in Canada? Nope. Well done, socks, he says.
Let me just point out, and I've pointed this out several times before, but there's still a very wide misunderstanding. Energy East, okay, let me back up here. We have a pipeline going from Alberta north over top of Lake Superior through northern Ontario. It comes down. In fact, that pipeline is only 2 or 3 stone throws from me. I drive over it every single day. The deer are out. The deer love it. It's beautiful. It's a pipeline cut through the woods here. It's all grown up, and the deer are out there grazing all of the time, okay? That pipeline comes from Alberta, down through, as I say, down through northern Ontario, down and ends at Cornwall. It brings natural gas. All of the gas, natural gas that you're burning in your house or wherever, comes through that pipeline. Now, Energy East, the idea was this. They would take the natural gas out of that pipeline, and we would get our gas elsewhere, which we can, it's not a problem. So they would take the gas out of the pipeline and replace it with oil. So we would have oil then running from Alberta all through Canada, northern Ontario, down through to Cornwall. Now, the idea then was, okay, the gas line ends in Cornwall. We would build a new pipeline from Cornwall through to St. John, New Brunswick, to the Irving refinery to supply the rest of Quebec and all of the maritime provinces. That was stopped by Trudeau, as you know, and the environmentalists. They stopped it. So as a consequence, and I've gone through this time and time again, all of the Maritimes, 65% of Quebec, have no choice. They cannot buy Canadian oil. They have to buy foreign, mostly from the United States and Saudi Arabia. Beautiful. Thank you very much, Liberals. So what I'm saying here is if we had Energy East, we would have oil running through that pipeline down to Cornwall. Now, because if Line 5 is shut off, we would obviously have to, reroute somehow through to Sarnia to make sure that but that's not a big deal. You would just put a pipeline through to Sarnia and keep on feeding those giant refineries there, and there would be no problem if we had Energy East. But we do not. So, as I say, we're screwed, blued, hued, and tattooed here at the mercy of the Americans. The Americans, many of them claim that we're great friends. Well, the first thing, and I think absolutely the first thing that Biden did, as you know, was cancel Keystone and put about 5,000 Canadians out of work. So I'm not sure how much of a friend they are, but whatever it is, we are at their mercy. John, have we got some more? No phone calls. Nobody wants to talk to me.
It's all quiet on this Friday, but here's the number again, 613-413-2217. I do have a couple of comments from Facebook, if you'd like them.
Yep.
Peter says, we need to fix these issues and get a prime minister with some balls to deal with these green wackos and do what is needed to improve the country into the next century. Don't talk about it in policy. Once in power, do it. Let the green wackos cry and whine. Chrissy is watching on Twitch, and she says, Lowell, you are so on the mark. And again, we invite your phone calls at 613-413-2217. We got a call coming in right now. You want to go to this call blind?
No, I'm find out who it is.
All right.
By the way, I have something else I want to talk about here. I am aged 84, as most of you know, and I have serious health problems. I'm still waiting for my first vaccine shot. And in fact, I've been trying for about 2 days now to find out if and when I ever will get that shot. Trying to deal with Health Canada or Public Health Ottawa. Forget it. I mean, you may as well chase a squirrel. Meantime, of course, plenty of other people, much younger, much healthier, not working in the health field are getting their shots. If you are Indigenous, for example, they're still giving shots apparently at the Wabano Center. If you're 70 and Indigenous, doesn't matter if you're the healthiest person in the world. Anyway, nobody seems to be concerned. Meantime, I just have to tell you that if I lived in the UK, long ago, I would have had both shots. Same thing in Israel, both shots. Ditto Serbia. If I lived in Serbia, by now, I would have had both shots. The United States, I would have had both shots by now. Turkey, if I lived in Turkey, I'd have both shots by now. Many other countries. But to listen to Trudeau and many others, you'd think that we're just booming with the whole vaccine program. All right, we're going to take a call. Who do we have?
We have Roxanne on the line with Lowell Green. Go ahead, Roxanne.
Yes, Roxanne. Right, yes.
Hi, Lowell. I cannot tell you how good you look in HD. It's fantastic.
I bet it's because I am fantastic.
Well, of course you are. I've been listening to you for over 25 years.
Good for you.
But, with everything that's going on, like with yesterday it was the Vance thing with our defense minister.
Isn't that a beauty? That's beauty, eh?
Oh, that's the cherry on the pie. I mean, it's unbelievable how they victimized the poor guy who came up with it, who came up and saw it in 2018. Then we're looking at the vaccines. I mean, most of these vaccines were all refused by South Africa because South Africa turned around and said, well, the AstraZeneca doesn't work for us with our variant, so we've refused them. Well, then Trudeau gobbled them all up. And you had the person that's in charge of the top doctor in Health Canada say, she was with Joyce Napier on Power Play last Friday, who told her that the Johnson & Johnson's vaccine was more effective than this AstraZeneca one. And Joyce just rolled her eyes like Joyce couldn't believe it. And this is the kind of stuff that we're getting. I don't know.
You go ahead.
I don't know why people keep voting this person in. I don't understand. I really don't. I am so disappointed, and quite frankly, I'm getting very depressed with all of this stuff because
don't be depressed. Just keep watching me. Let me ask you this. You are, excuse me. Just let me. I know that you pay very close attention. How many vaccines do you think have been administered so far in all of Canada? And any idea?
Not much. If we're at 2%, 3%, I don't believe when they say 5, 6%. I don't believe them.
Well, okay. Let me just get in here. Mm-hmm. As of this morning, Canada, in all of Canada, we have administered 2.17 million. That is slightly more than about 5% of the population. Okay. Mm-hmm. Now, mm-hmm. let me just put this into perspective. Yesterday, the United States set a record. They vaccinated 2 million people. Mm-hmm. So in one day, the United States has vaccinated as many people as we in Canada have been able to do in 3 freaking months. And Trudeau and the rest of the Liberals stand there and they boast about all of the damn vaccines coming in. I want to tell you right now that this is an outrageous lie. Even with all of the new vaccines that we got yesterday, so far we are looking at 2.17 million, about 5% of our total population in 3 months. It's astonishing.
It's astonishing. It's disappointing. And people still want Trudeau, and I don't understand why.
Let me give you one more little bit of good news, and then we have to move on. We have more emails coming in.
Okay.
Have you heard about the situation in our quarantine hotels?
Oh, I know. I've been watching Rebel. One of the Rebel news journalists is in one of those things, and he's been filming it. It's terrible what they're going through.
All right. Okay. Sorry, we're a little short of time. So the food, they say, is slop. All kinds of complaints about the rotten food. Okay. Well, guess what I found out this morning? The rotten food is being supplied by caterers hired by Trudeau. Not only is Trudeau, the Trudeau government, responsible for hiring these caterers, but the Trudeau government refuses to show us the contracts. In other words, we don't know why the food is so rotten. Is it because he's only allowing 50 cents a meal? I don't know. So not only they won't even let us see the contracts that they signed with the caterers for the rotten food.
Yep. It's awful. We're paying all of the Trudeau government has all this money because we pay for it, whether
You're right.
we're retired, whether we're working, whatever. And they will not let us know how they spend our money that we're giving them.
You
and that's
got it,
wrong.
baby. You got it, baby. Good for you. Thank you for your call, John. We've got some texts coming in here.
Yes, we do, and we'll get to those to wrap things up. Let's squeeze in another sponsor mention, shall we? At this point.
Oh, okay. Absolutely. Thank you, John. Shields. Good folks. I've said this so many times. These days, if you can find somebody that you can really trust, that you can count on to do exactly what they say, Shields is your company, all right? Since 1946, family owned. Now, some people, I'm still getting people say, well, they're in Pakenham. They can't be very big. Well, the store itself, where you go in on the main street, is not very big, but they have a huge warehouse. This is where they have all of the appliances in stock and at least 99% of everything that you could possibly want. So no long delays. And the website, and they still show there's still government rebates available. Many of the big box stores, these government rebates have run out for those stores, not at Shields. So you could save yourself a ton of money at Shields. Shields.ca. SCHEELS.ca. At least give them a chance, folks. They're local. They're good. They're trustworthy. They're honest. Give them a chance. Yes, John.
I wish we had a prize to give away for the line of the day, but it would go to Lisa. Food is coming from China, maybe? Well done, Lisa. Well done.
Can you imagine this? The federal government hires these caterers, and that food is slop. It's terrible, and they won't tell us how. They won't let us see the contracts. Unbelievable. Go ahead, John.
Julie says, I keep checking on Ottawa Public Health. If my parents lived at the Tim Hortons or the community center up the street, they'd be eligible to get the vaccine. Due to their postal code, they don't qualify. It's one huge disaster. Some of the other comments coming in on Facebook. Peter says we need to fix these issues. And sorry, that was from earlier. The Prime Minister with balls. Peter, I meant to delete that. I apologize. Guy says just grab a grubby old coat and some old clothes and head on down to the shelter. Problem solved. Don't forget your free needles and condoms, and grab a hot meal while you're down there. Saturday trifecta, says Guy. Annabelle.
Can I tell you something? If I need a condom, this is a miracle greater than the loaves and fishes. Go ahead, John.
Oh, wow. Orville says he loves your show, Lowell. Thank you, Orville. We appreciate the comment. And got a call from our GP this morning. Hubby, 83 years old, has his appointment tomorrow. Tim says my brother got his second shot today. He's 64, living in Georgia. And finally, an email from Linda who says, Dear Lowell, we've heard much talk about this, but nothing about what is being done to kill the virus before dying dumped into the river. I wrote to City asking if and how our water supply is being tested, as well as the river is its source. Haven't heard anything yet. Should we be concerned?
It's called poop testing. We have to move on here. I just want to point out, yesterday, my good buddy, my neighbor, Tom Toomey, and Carrie, they have a place in Florida. Good for them. They've worked hard all of their lives. They deserve it. But he phoned and to tell me that he and Carrie had just had their first vaccine, and the second vaccine was going to be in 21 days because, they're not desperate in Florida. The population of Florida is about 21 million, and about 6 million people have already been vaccinated. Here in Canada, our population is 37 million, and we have slightly more than 2 million vaccinated. But apparently, we're doing really, really well. Oh my God. You know what? Yesterday I had a little shot of scotch. Today I think I'll just settle for a damn beer. Thank you all. We'll be back.
You've been listening to the legendary Lowell Green on blasttheradio.com. Connect with the show at blasttheradio.com/Lowell Green. Find the podcast on Apple, Google, Spotify, and more. Or ask your smart speaker to play the Lowell Green podcast. Lowell is live weekdays at 2 p.m. Eastern on blasttheradio.com.